Hi, I wanted to walk you through some of the great features you will find in the AAC Informal Assessment, which in fact is more than one assessment. It's a whole bunch of components. So let me take you through a little journey. The first part here, at least alphabetically, is the informal assessment. And what this includes is two or more interactions or observations that can be put down in terms of what you see for receptive and expressive, as well as communication modalities. And then an interview with the most familiar communication partner. This would ideally be a family member, but could also be the main classroom teacher in terms of the different areas of language knowledge. So we have communication modalities, and then we have phonological language, semantic, syntactic, morphologic, can't say that word, and pragmatic. And then, of course, we want to look at any AAC operational skills that the child has if they are using an aided AAC system. And then a summary of the child's skills, as well as next steps that need to be addressed. If you go to the next one, this is just observations by themselves. So it's just a one-pager, but if you need something to help walk you through how to do observations for a child that has early language or uses AAC, then this is your go-to. Team input. These are forms that can be given out before a meeting, and the reason that you would want to give these out is so that your meeting is shorter. You have all this information right from the get-go. A lot of this is information that can only be obtained by the family, and that's okay. It's great to get this ahead of time. So everyone can fill out strengths and motivations for the child. And then hopefully the parent or caregiver can fill out the medical and health status. And then everyone hopefully is going to be helpful in coming up with the pragmatic communication status. How well can this child communicate under different circumstances? And then what is their vocabulary and syntax? Compare it to same age peers. And what communication tools have been tried in the past, as well as what would different people in the team want to try next? Some of the team members might have something very specific that they want to try or that they feel very comfortable with, and you want to know that before you go into your first meeting. So that is the team input page. The data here. This is just Google Sheets that I put together. It talks about how to come up with some priorities. And then, you can't really see, but there's tabs at the bottom. And this gives you an example of how you might take some data and what the graph is going to look like as you go along. So there's places here for 3 different goals, using the sample here and using some example SMART goals on this very front tab. Goal developer. So this is where you can work with the team to come up with what goals do you want this child to have for the next year. So these are great when you're coming up with IEP goals, as well as just initial goals or goals for trialing the system. So it's all just based on how many prompts the child needs in the different areas of language. And if they're using an aided AAC system, what are their operational skills? And then a summary of their strengths and weaknesses. And then, of course, this is really important, what areas are going to have the biggest impact on the child's education and quality of life, and use that to create your priority areas. From your priority areas, you're going to be able to come up with your goals. Critically, not only do you need a priority area, but you have to have a baseline level. What I found is that I often will get goals handed to me from other speech pathologists that have no baseline. And the reason they have no baseline is because the goal actually isn't measurable. For example, if it says that Johnny will increase the number of words that he speaks, that's not a measurable goal because you don't know what increase means in that case. You don't know where Johnny started. You don't know what time period. You don't know what the words need to be about. You don't know what communication modality. So those are all things that you definitely have to keep in mind as you're figuring out your baseline. Trials and evaluations. Okay, so this is when you want to take a look at a child getting a new or updated AAC, an aided AAC system. So this is a very long report because you're going to be using this not only to decide what areas to trial, but also to help you write up a funding report in the end if that's the route you decide to go. So there's different parts to this. So this takes place over a variety of time. The first part is the set assessment planning. This is where you'll want to have that team input given to you ahead of time so that you can pre-fill in a bunch of this information before you even meet. And then you can finish filling in that whole part one at a meeting where you go through the set as well as the features needed by the student. That's just a checklist. And then you can go through what are the most important features, put them in down here, and then put a list of the different tools that you know about or that you'd be able to get hold of through the company or through a loaner system or through just different avenues that you have in your capacity and within your district, state, or even national level. From there, you're going to want to put down what are the priority areas. So let's say you're trying out Proloquo Go is a tool that you want to use because it has the features that you need, which are like a very large vocabulary, ability to use, to add on morphological endings, lightweight, easy to access for the family because they're already familiar with it, etc. So what are your priority areas? What are you really going to be looking at here? And what are the baseline levels? And then how are you going to know if the tool is effective? It is going to be a huge time saver when you come back and meet again if you can look through and be like, this tool was effective because, or this tool was not effective because. So that's going to be part of the action plan here. Who's going to procure the different tools? Who's going to give the training? Who's going to take data? And when are you going to meet again as a team? That's what happens in part two. You're going to actually meet again as a team and you're going to go through each of the tools that was trialed. So what was the name of it? What were the dates? How did the students' communication change while they were using the device? If it didn't change at all, then that's probably not a great tool for them. What did they like? What are advantages? What are some disadvantages? And then a summary. And of course, most funding sources are going to want a variety of tools tried, usually at least 3. So I put in 3. You can always copy and paste for more trials. Finally, your team is going to come up with some final recommendations. And these are going to be a summary of the different things that you have already come up with. So what are the features that are needed? Why are they needed? How will we know if the child is being successful? And then finally, what is the final recommendation that the speech pathologist and the team comes up with? What do we think this child really needs in order to be successful? What's the action plan? Who's going to do the training? Who's going to maintain? Who's going to do the therapy? Who's going to collect data? If something breaks down, who's going to be in charge? And then, of course, the evaluator's name and qualifications. And finally, this is just based on alphabetical order, not because it's the least important. This is the AAC Trials and Evaluation process where it literally just goes through the different steps that you're going to need to take if you're going to do an AAC trial and evaluation, as well as links to the different forms. So this is just kind of your checklist to go through as you decide that you're going to do a formal eval on a student and look at different resources for the student. Oops, I didn't mean to put that in there, but I'm just putting it in there for you right now so you can remember. This is all about the AAC Informal Assessment. There are tons and tons. Let me get rid of that. There are tons and tons of resources here, and I hope that this really helps you on your journey as you take on the role of an AAC evaluator.